Hello and welcome to today's D-Link webinar with the subject today being Ask Our Techs Anything. This is a session that has been suggested by a number of our customers and partners, so we're really looking forward to having a great conversation with everybody today. My name is Phil Tarbox, National Sales Manager for Business Solutions for D-Link. It's great to have your company today, whether you're joining us live online or you're catching up on our YouTube channel. It's also great to have a host of D-Link intelligence with us today, with the brains trust of D-Link, our wonderful technical team. It's a very warm welcome to Aaron Bilton. Good day to you, Aaron. Warm welcome to Ilya, our Commercial Product Manager for D-Link, and also to David Urbano, our Pre-Sales Engineer for D-Link as well. All right, so without any further ado, we shall get started with today's session. So we thought before we got into some of the questions that have already been submitted today, that it'd be a great opportunity while having our three preeminent engineer and technical resources with us today, that we'd actually go through from them and get their top three technical tips. That may well generate some questions as well. So as per normal, as part of these D-Link webinars, please feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A box as they, if there's anything that comes up there as well. First off, we'll be heading down to Melbourne, Victoria for Aaron, then back to Sydney with David Urbano, and last but certainly by no means least, to Ilya for each of their top three technical tips. We'll then be going through your questions. We're looking forward to having a great discussion there, and of course a little bit of an overview about D-Link for Business in the region, how you can engage with us, and a quick overview of our team as well. So let's get started. Aaron, great to have you with us this morning. How are things down there in Melbourne?
Morning. Getting busy now that the COVID restrictions have been lifted.
Terrific. I'm sure you're both you and your customers are very much looking forward to getting out and about, and have been enjoying getting out and about as well.
Yeah, it makes a change. Terrific.
All right. So tell us your top three tips for technical success when deploying a network.
Well, first of all, use a UPS. You know, it's the number one thing. I get asked all the time, but look, if you're putting anything in that is mission critical, or you want to last or be reliable, put it on a UPS, because today's power supplies are horrendous, and the actual power providers, because of all these solar panels that are going in, they're fluctuating all over the time. I've seen some really nasty power surges personally at my house. I mean, I've been running a UPS forever, and it's continuously buck and boosting all the time, cutting in and out, protecting my equipment. And I haven't had any failures in relation to power since I put the UPS in. So it is super critical. So if you are putting a UPS in, first of all, make sure, one, it's a pure sine wave one. If you have one that's a cheaper one that's putting out a pseudo sine wave that's more square wave in relation to the sine wave, anything that's running a sort of a plug pack power supply, that switch mode, may not like the output, and they may squeal or fail. Power conditioning, now if you can use a UPS with a power conditioning type of a scenario, yeah, that'll protect you from the surges, the spikes, the lightning, the power disturbances, that type of scenario, because you can get some very, very noisy power. Automatic voltage regulation. Now, I see that a lot. I've got home automation monitoring that, my UPS monitoring that, and I see voltages anywhere from 190 up to 260. And it should be a stable 220 to 240. So that goes up and down like a yo-yo, and that also depends on where you live. Especially if you have power in the country that's running on a SWIR system, that single wire earth return, that's some nasty stuff. So you definitely have to have UPSs out there. And at least when you're putting in a UPS, definitely spec it so you're running it at 50% load. It's no use kicking it over, say you're running it at 100%, kick it over to batteries, and you've got about 2 minutes worth of power out of it. So running at 50% of the size of the UPS you're after, that's also a very, very good figure. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is if you are using UPSs, check the batteries every couple of years. Should be either replaced or at least tested, because that is very mission critical. Because it's always when you kick over to the batteries that they fail.
So there's lots of different UPS vendors out there, and we certainly don't have any allegiance to one over the other. So do go and talk to your IT distributor or integrator. Certainly, D-Link's distribution partners, both in Australia and New Zealand, have multiple brands of UPS. So do go and talk to your distributor of choice, and go and get their advice, and go and get an introduction into a vendor, and go and speak to some vendors about their particular product. Yeah, great, a great tip there, Aaron.
Jump over to the next one. So another big thing I see out there, the catchphrase is don't put domestic product into a business environment. If you want something reliable with the uptime and the capacity that you're after, use business grade equipment. Now, obviously with some ISPs, you've still got to use their domestic grade modem that they give you, which is labeled as a business product for their phones, but there's ways to get around that. But look, if you're going to use your modem routers, at least put them into bridge mode, run them on a DSR series. We can handle the concurrent sessions we need. In relation to like domestic product, when you hit that limit, it's going to reset the table and drop it down. So your average speed is going to drop. Also too, a lot of these new fiber connections, if you've got a synchronous fiber connection, you've actually got to put limiting in. Might have to go back one there, Phil. You may have to put speed limits on your up and your downlink. Otherwise your ISP is going to limit you. So Wi-Fi access points, DAP series at a minimum. We've got good CPUs in it, good memory, good OSs. The better the CPU, the more clients, the higher throughput you're going to get, because your Wi-Fi is time sliced. So you do need the CPU for that function. And switches, I mean, minimum 1100 series. One they're very affordable. And you've got VLANs, loopback detection. And just management, you can physically give it an IP address, see what's going on, monitor port statistics. So it's important. You just don't put a domestic unmanaged product into a business environment. I find that because of the amount of stuff I run at home, I have to run it as a full business environment, and that way it's stable. And then if the wife's happy, then everyone's happy. So it's always a good thing. With IoT, I mean, you need the decent Wi-Fi for IoT and streaming to TVs. Very, very important to have a decent, solid Wi-Fi experience these days.
And of course, with any of the D-Link business grade equipment, you do, I guess, what comes along with that as well is a limited lifetime warranty, next business day advanced replacement, and lifetime support available to you on that product as well. So there's certainly some advantages in using D-Link business grade equipment as well. Aaron was referring to having a happy wife and IoT equipment and so on. There was a webinar that Aaron spoke at just a couple of weeks ago where he gave us a virtual tour of his home and all of the IoT devices that he's running in his home, running on the D-Link DAP series access points. How many IoT devices have you got there, Aaron?
I've got wireless 64, but my physical network, I've got 89 physical devices. So running 89 devices on a domestic modem is not an option. And running any more than 20 wireless clients on a domestic product would have very negative benefits for my work life, my environment at home. So yeah, no, it's very important to put a business grade product in, and they're not that expensive.
Okay. Great tip, Aaron. Thank you for sharing sharing that one with us. Okay, and lastly, survey.
No, doing Wi-Fi, survey. If it's important for a warehouse, you definitely need it surveyed. I recently done a survey this week in a warehouse that wasn't surveyed, and unfortunately for them, they've got a bad Wi-Fi experience. I went and surveyed it with a physical access point on a tripod with my special software, and we found out, the number of access points are correct, but they're just badly located. So yes, we're replacing the Wi-Fi in that and relocating all those. But also in today's environment, we're getting very, very congested. Our frequencies are getting absolutely hammered, and it's only going to get worse. We've got Wi-Fi AX coming, well, it's here, sorry, which you can use both bands at the same time. And depending on power levels and channel widths, you can blow away both bands on one AP. So like in my example on this screen, say 13 channels, 2.4 gig at 20 megahertz. So if we start bonding these together to use wireless N, we're going to reduce the number of APs we can have with power levels that are causing co-channel interference. And co-channel interference leads to a lot of issues, drop packets, bad user experience, retry rate. Retry rate is the big thing. And the same on the 5 gig. If we start using AC with 80 meg up to 160 meg channels, we're going to see a lot of co-channel interference. So now we have to start, if we want more APs for density, then we have to start lowering power levels and reducing bandwidth channels.
Okay, so how do we go about surveying? What are some of the things that we need to go and do a successful survey?
I think it's on the next slide, actually.
Oh, really? That's funny about that.
You have this technology. There we go. So doing surveys, it's important if you're going to do a survey with the equipment you're going to recommend, because every AP and manufacturer is different. There's definitely differences. Antenna arrays, radio types, quality of the radios, CPUs in the APs will cause considerable changes in the environment. So one, you need an AP that you're going to use. Two, you've got to power it up. So typically we'll use a battery scenario on a tripod. So we can put them in certain locations, walk around and survey it, and auto slides just progressed, beautiful. Then we need a floor plan. If we have a floor plan, we can put it into our survey software. I can tell it where the AP is, walk around and measure things like retry rates, signal strength, MCS indexes, all sorts of goodies, and find out, best placements. If it's not in a good place, we can move it and resurvey again. But we need like an overlap. We want to try and achieve a -65 level across our floor plans. But we want the overlapping sections to be, what'd you say? You would like a nice 10 dB difference between APs, but we want an overlap at -65 with the access points running at half power. Now that's a personal AI survey, and the results you get out of it are nice seamless roaming. If we use a controller, the APs, you'll get a nice seamless roam out of it. And it's important with those, like in a warehouse with barcode scanners. Barcode scanners are notorious for requiring a lot of signal. So like the minimum you'll need for a barcode scanner will be -65. So I get that asked an awful lot.
So you talk about surveying here, so the equipment needed, so certainly putting an AP on a tripod, getting it up nice and high where it's actually going to be is really important. There's a whole bunch of software that you use when you're surveying. I think there's a fairly expensive software tool that you use today, but there are some alternatives as well, right?
There are indeed. There certainly are indeed. Insider, SolarWinds, NetSpot, VizTumbler. You can even do simple things like use Wi-Fi analyzer on an Android phone, just to even get the signal levels correct around the place. So there's many ways to do it. And if you have warehousing and office environments you need surveyed, just shoot us an email and we can arrange that for you.
Yeah, so that's something that we can do physically, of course, doing a physical survey. is always going to give the best result. But that is something which we can do predictively for you as well. I bet over the last 6 months, Aaron, you've been doing a heck of a lot of predictive surveys.
I have indeed. And actually since then I've actually done the predictive. So we've got the count sort of semi-right. And now I'm going back and doing a physical survey just to make sure it is 100% correct. And yeah, so far so good.
Okay. Of course, we do cover a lot of these tips, if you like, in our wireless training course, our classroom training course, part of our DCNP, D-Link Certified Network Professional Training. And we have covered some very basics of these in the wireless technical webinars, which we ran earlier this year as well. You can find those on our YouTube channel. Towards the end of this webinar today, you'll find details as to how to go and find those webinars on our YouTube channel. Okay, thanks, Aaron. They're great, those tips. Thanks so much for sharing those with us today. All right, now I'd like to ask David Urbano to share with us his top 3 technical tips. David, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. So my top 3, I just thought about something that we tend to see when we go on site, and that probably we tend to forget, but they're very helpful precisely when we want to troubleshoot or when we want to do a change on our network. So I think one of the main things that I see on site is network documentation. I know it's quite complicated or difficult to find details, especially if I'm taking over on a network, on an existing network, but we should try to find all those details, even for ourselves and from previous management, right? IT management. But on saying that, sometimes it's as easy as just walking around, checking where the switches are, where the servers are, looking at the cables. Perhaps they might have labels or not, but the idea is that if we are taking over, well, we need to obviously retrieve that details from somewhere. If it's a new or existing, if it's a new network, clearly it's easier for us to create a topology map, to create some labelings, etc., etc. Don't forget, topology maps are quite simple to create, and we used to use Visio from Microsoft. Nowadays, I have this tool called Lucidchart. It's online. It doesn't require a subscription, at least for the simple stuff, as to create a quick topology map. But also make sure that you have MAC addresses versus IP addresses as well. We use a lot of DHCP servers, so we tend to automate the whole process. So IP addresses that will be assigned or leased automatically. But if we are doing, let's say, an IP surveillance integration, right? We want probably the cameras to be statically assigning the IP addresses. So that's when our documentation starts growing, and we make sure that we understand how the network is running. So this is a great tool. Of course, VLANs, subnets, when we go on site, we want to understand if I have a point of failure. Well, not only what's the IP address, but is there maybe a VLAN on the network? Is there a different subnet, where I'm working on, what exactly they talk to, etc., etc. And also that helps in terms of security, right? We have VLANs that help us as well to segregate the broadcast domain. So that's also a good tip, I think. The next one is, Phil, if you could, thank you. The next one up is how I tend, and my recommendation on troubleshooting. Right, the whole idea is to probably keep at the back of your mind the OSI model, right, where it's stable with different layers, and that's the way that that's the way that computers communicate between each other. But it is also a good way on how to troubleshoot, right? When we have a problem, unless we are 100% aware of what it is, we could use this model to troubleshoot most of our issues, especially on an existing network, right? So we can start from the physical layer. We can start even top up or from bottom top or top bottom. That's depending on what we're trying to achieve. So I normally go through the physical layer that we tend to forget many times. Is it the right cable? Is it the right transceiver? Am I using 1 gig, 10 gig? I know that's a bit silly sometimes, but trust me, many times, just there, that's what the problem is, right? After we know that the physical layer, even electrical, power, etc., what Aaron was talking before, is right, then we can move to the next step. What about the switches? Are my MAC addresses getting through the switches? Are the switches learning the MAC address? And so on and so forth, up until I get to the software itself. But normally we stay in our line of business. We stay into the 3 first, from bottom to top, from physical data link, which is the switches, and the routing layer, which is the third one, right? So that's why we normally approach the troubleshooting, and I think it's a good idea if you guys tend to implement it in this way. It helps a lot, and you have an organized way on how to tackle different problems.
I like the idea, David, of being organised in terms of troubleshooting. I was out on site the other week. It's not something that I do very regularly. I did have a technical person with me at the time, and certainly found that after trying to get stacking working on this particular switch for about 30 minutes, and we couldn't quite get it working. We should have checked the physical layer, because there was instead of a 10 gig SFP module or a 10 gig direct attach cable, there was only a 1 gig fiber module linking these 2 switches, and you can't stack over 1 gig. It's kind of doesn't make a whole bunch of sense to do that. So would have saved about 30 or 40 minutes of time if we'd gone and checked that physical layer first. So it's probably one reason as to why I'm not a technician. David, great tip. Thanks for that. Thanks for that one.
Yeah. So yeah, just having a look at it. Something that actually happens quite a lot on especially on big environments is the loops, right? So something very simple that we can have a look is check the LEDs. How do they look when you have an issue? Are they having are they having a broadcasting problem there? Is the network working right or not? That's just simple and very physical that you can just have a look at. Another good tip probably is that I guess some of you might have experienced or maybe not on our switches is looking at the cable diagnostics settings on the actual switch. If you go to the menu within the actual switch, you can find this option there, and it will help you to also check whether the cable, the Ethernet cable that the port is connected into, it is properly physically well plugged, connected, or is having a physical issue. So as you can see in this example, where the pairs are working fine, it will come up with a good result, or probably not. So it doesn't take much. You can do that on every single of your ports, or in all of them if you want to.
And that's certainly something that we cover again in our switch training courses, the physical classroom courses, which we haven't been able to do during 2020. Is actually testing that. There are some faulty cables that are actually used during the hands-on practical sessions. So yeah, anyone that's gone and done those courses would certainly be aware of that. And I could tell you of at least a dozen stories of partners that have gone and used our cable diagnostics tool that have gone and solved gone and solved problems. So I guess that's there checking that that physical layer of the network as well.
All right, so next one up will be firmware upgrades. I think from time to time it's pretty good to check whether we have released something new. We don't have an automated process because we have plenty of products that will come up with firmware upgrades every month, every 3, every 6 months, etc. We tend not to have too many on the business side, just because we tend to not disrupt, obviously, the process with the equipment. We know that they are working on massive businesses, so we tend not to come up with massive changes there. However, if it's required, we definitely put it up and we'll let you know. A good idea will be to check the release notes, whether so you can find out what's the modification from the previous to the current one. Sometimes it will be security issues, security enhancement. It could be just the way it works, so we make your life easier. Sometimes it's just fixing something that you actually have probably let us know that is not working right. So we obviously are very open to different changes from the users, from our clients. So just have a quick look. If you have switches that probably you haven't touched for quite a while, maybe have a look, the release notes, look if it's worth it. Now, yeah, we always follow the rule. If it's not broken and it's working fine, don't touch it. That's 100% true. Just have a look. Be cautious, be aware, probably give it a test run, and then use the firmware. The idea is not breaking anything, it's just to enhance the experience of the end user, your client, and obviously yourself, which is the one administering the network. So that's another good idea. And you can find this from the website directly, from the D-Link website.
Great, thanks, David. Appreciate your input there. Okay, Ilya, top 3 tips from your experience, what you've seen out in the field over your many years of experience with D-Link.
Hello, everyone. Thank guys for the other tips. They were all great. The ones I could think of or remember, firstly, is about PoE. I know that a lot of people nowadays are using PoE switches in their businesses to power access points, cameras, etc., etc. So there's definitely a growing demand in PoE switches. But one thing that people may forget, or sometimes may not even think about it, is that each PoE switch has a so-called PoE budget, or maximum PoE budget. That means that there's a limit of how much PoE power it can deliver or push to all the devices. Now, you probably know about different standards, PoE standards, PoE or PoE plus. So PoE up to 15 watts per port and PoE plus up to 30 watts per port. But it doesn't mean that each device would consume that much power. So normally, the access point would need 7 watts of power, sometimes 15 watts of power. So it really depends on the model, what type of radio is working in that particular access point, what CPU it's got, and how much load it's actually getting from on the network from clients connecting and pushing data. Same applies to cameras. So some cameras do not have infrared LEDs, so it doesn't need much of power. Sometimes these cameras may have LEDs, so at night when LEDs power up, they would consume a lot more power. And some cameras even have motors, electric motors in them, like pan, tilt, and zoom cameras. In that case, if the motor is running and the camera is powered through PoE, it will consume a lot more power. So whenever the device is connected to a switch, it actually negotiates how much power it needs, and the switch allocates that power to that device. And again, depending on how many devices you're connecting and how much power each of these devices would consume, would depend how quickly that switch will reach to the maximum limit of its PoE budget. So we have different models of switches. So you probably be familiar with the D-Link range. So any switch which has ends with P, for example, DGS 1210 10P. So P means that it's PoE switch, and it will provide certain PoE budget. We also have switches with extended PoE budget. So that's normally MP. That's what stands for max power, which would have an increased PoE budget for power-hungry devices. So normally, when you're looking at a switch, you can check in the specs in the data sheet what type of PoE budget it offers, and then you can also check what devices you want to connect to that switch and estimate how much PoE budget you would need. So there is an example here. Phil, if you could press the button there just to show how it all works out. So this is a snip from one of our switches from the data sheet, and you can see that it offers PoE budget of 185 watts. So just an average switch, we can go 370 watts or even more, 740 watts switches. So in that case, if, for example, you want to estimate how many access points you can power with that particular switch, what you do, you go into the specs of your access point and have a look, what's the power consumption, what's the maximum power consumption of that access point. So in this example, we have 10.5 watts. And another tip here is that you better add some tolerance in here. We normally recommend about 15% of power loss over distance. So the cable itself, which provides power to the device, it also loses some of that power. So as a rule of thumb, 15% should be enough to cover even, say, 100 meter, 90 meter cable. So if you do a simple calculation, so we have 185 watts available from the switch. Access point will consume 10.5 and adding 15% on top of that. So on average, you would get for that switch about 15 access points, which it could power. So that would be your rule of thumb. So even though the switch can be, say, a 24-port PoE switch, if your devices are power hungry, so do not expect the switch to be capable of powering all of them, or you would need a switch with a extended PoE budget. So that's something which we see quite often, and whenever we work on or designing on a project, we always check with the customer what type of PoE devices they're connecting and how many of them, and we can look up what's the wattage requirements for these devices, so we could recommend the right switch for the right solution.
Great tip, Ilya. And I guess what happens if I exceed that PoE budget? Does everything stop working? What happens?
Oh, very good point, Phil. There is actually, yeah, what will happen in the worst case scenario is, yeah, some of the devices would stop working altogether. So they will lose power or they will reboot randomly, because normally power is getting, being fed in pulses rather than a continuous power supply. So in our switches, we can also set up a PoE priority. So you can actually prioritize certain devices which, if, for example, you're expecting a power shortage on PoE, and you think, okay, that access point or that camera may go down, but that device should never go down. So you put in that device as high PoE priority. So that's the idea behind that feature in our switches.
Great, thanks, Ilya. Tip number 2. Ooh,
okay.
4G. This is a tricky one.
Yes, so we do come across this quite often with not only with our, say, 4G devices that we sell, but also, say, customers using their own. One thing to remember is that whenever you're doing networking, so there are 2 types of IP addresses: a public IP address, which is routable on the internet, so all servers on the internet would have public IP addresses, and also there is a range which is a private range of IP addresses. So there are several ranges that's used on private networks, and they're not routable on the internet. So normally they're used on inside of your network. So whenever you connect to the internet, you get a public IP address from your provider. It sits on your router on the router's WAN port, but inside your network, you're using your own private IP addresses. So when you access the internet, a process called network address translation and replaces your private IP with public IP, so you can actually browse the internet and get the information backward and forwards from the servers. So one thing that not a lot of people know is that on a mobile connections, so if you're using a SIM card, or if you're using a mobile phone, the carriers are providing so-called network carrier-grade network address translation. So they're actually providing you with a private IP address. Because you're working within their network, so you can still get access to the internet because they're doing network address translation. But what it means that if you're hosting any type of service, say for example you have cameras, surveillance cameras, or you have a server, a mail server, or some other business application which requires access from the internet. If you're running this on a regular SIM card through a say 3G, 4G, or 5G connection, you will see that people cannot access your service when you're doing that. It's because you're getting a private IP address from your carrier. It is a solvable solution. You would need to get whenever you're setting up your system, you would need to get a SIM from your carrier, which is a business grade SIM, and you can actually get them with a public IP address. So whenever you connect, you get a public IP address, and in many cases you can even get a static IP address. So that means that your IP address doesn't change, and it's always being public. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you're setting up your network for continuous use of 3G, 4G, or 5G, or is it for backup only? So that's quite common scenario when you're using, say, a device like M2M modem or 4G, 3G modem like we have DWM 312 or 315. In that case, if you just for internet access for outgoing traffic, it doesn't matter. You can use any SIM card, it's fine. But if you're expecting connectivity from the internet into your network, for VPN connectivity or into your cameras, into your surveillance system, in that case, you would need to get a SIM, which allows you to get a public IP address from your carrier.
Great, thanks, Ilya. And last tip.
Okay, this one, so about surveillance. So again, I know that David and Aaron can concur. Whenever they are designing a project for IP surveillance solution for a customer, a lot of customers thinking, "Ooh, this camera supports 30 frames per second. Let's set it up with 30 frames per second." And it's definitely it's an advantage over say 10 frames per second. The video looks smoother, etc. But there are certainly downsides, and the main thing is to remember: is it really necessary for surveillance to run at 30 frames per second? And the answer is no, it's not really necessary, unless it is a specific purpose where you would need high frame second. But in majority of cases, it is not required. So I'm showing you this graph here from IPVM.com, where they did the survey amongst professional surveillance installers. What frames per second do they normally use on their systems? And as you can see, in majority of cases, they're using just 6 to 10 frames per second. Yes, the video may not be as smooth as you would see in on your TV, but for surveillance, where you can see people's faces properly, cars, number plates, etc., so that's all works fine with 6 to 10 frames per second. And the main disadvantage, of course, of using high frame rate, I mean, nothing stops you from doing so, but one thing to keep in mind is that whenever you're using high frame rate, that means that you're putting more load on your network, so there's a lot more bandwidth required. So the camera will be pushing quite a heavy stream into the network, and you would have to deal, if you've got multiple cameras on your network, that means that you would need to have a beefier backbone for your network, and so a beefier switches, etc. And as well, if you're recording this footage, you will also need a lot more storage for your video, because a video with 30 frames per second would require a lot more storage than the video with the 10 frames per second. So I made this little table here using our calculator on how much bandwidth you would need with 30 frames per second and with 10 frames per second for the same, say, 5 megapixel cameras using H.265 compression. So as you can see, there's quite a large difference. So almost double the bandwidth required, more than double the bandwidth required, and with storage also more than double. So with 30 frames per second, it is 12 TB, 12 terabytes that you would need for 30 days recording, and with 10 frames per second, it's only 5. There are solutions, obviously, say in the software. If you're using, say, a DVCam professional software, it actually allows you to record or boost your recording. So to record at lower frames per second, but whenever it detects motion, it can increase the frames per second. But as I said, for majority of applications, for majority of surveillance scenarios, 10 frames per second is enough.
Great. Thanks, Ilya. Some great tips there. Thanks so much for sharing those with us, both Ilya, David, and also Aaron as well. Okay, so now it's over. Now it's over to you. There's a few questions that have been coming through. Ilya, we've got one here that's come through from Zoltan, just regarding 4G. Can you please provide an example of a business grade SIM?
Well, I know that Telstra provides business grade SIMs. So I know that David, for example, for our own internal testing and for his own testing, has got business SIM. David, did you get it from Telstra, or is it someone else?
This one is from M2M.
M2M1 is the company that can provide those. But yeah, I think you can speak to your carrier, the business part of Telstra, Optus, and I'm sure Vodafone as well. Will give you the option for the type of IP address that you're looking for, and they can look at giving you a static IP address if that's something that you need as well. So yeah, it's not something that we can certainly do, but certainly please do go and talk to your carrier. Going into their high street shopfront retail store, you're probably going to get lots of blank looks and be told no, you can't do that. You're going to need to speak to a business centre as to from one of those carriers. Okay, thanks for that question from Zoltan. Good question here from some comments here from Alex. Optus offer public IPs from $5 per month, additional to a regular 4G business plan. And you can still pull data with other SIMs on the same plan which don't have public IPs. Okay, Zoltan's come through with another question, another good one as well, and I think we do almost have an answer for this particular one. So is there a plan in the future for the DSR 500 AC? And I imagine the 1000 AC is being in that same family. That's one of our services routers, a business grade router, to support a 4G USB dongle.
Thanks. Good question, Zoltan. Excellent question, in fact, because I'm currently working on a guide on how to set up our DSR series routers for 4G connectivity, failover or for main connection. The recently released DWM 222 or DWM 222 USB dongle, so that's compatible with the router and works really well. So we tested it with different providers, and you will see a guide on our website, but it is pretty straightforward to set it all up. You will see it probably tomorrow, that new guide. Okay, that's fantastic. So yeah, DWM 222 is available now. So terrific. Yeah, we'll see what we can. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That'll go up onto our public website as soon as that's available. Zoltan, that's something that Bernie, our account manager based up in Brisbane,
that Bernie might be able to help you out with that one as well. But a few questions come in regarding home networking. Of course, that's certainly something that we can help with. Of course, our experience is more on the business grade side of things. But of course, during the last 9 months, with people, with many more people working from home, there's certainly been more stress that's been put on home networks, and there's certainly been a lot of upgrades and improvement that's happened to people's home networks over the last 9 months. So, question here from David. I have a 5G modem providing 500 meg of connectivity. It's great you must have been in one of those 5G coverage areas, David, wherever you are. When it's being distributed around my concrete house with a D-Link access point, I can only get 20 megabits per second within 10 meters of that access point. And when there's a single brick wall between it, speed reduces further. What model of access point or device system can I use to pass the high-speed internet further around the house with better penetration of brick and concrete walls? Who'd like to have a go at answering this one?
I can start maybe. Aaron, with his vast experience in dealing with concrete walls, can also chip in. But I just want to mention that unfortunately, with concrete or with brick or any other material which stops radio waves from going through, it is physics. So it's not that if you use a different access point, you may get a totally different result. You may get a better result if you're using a business grade access point due to high power and better, say, antenna arrays, which would provide a better signal, and also they can make beam forming to work for you and give you a slight better results than say a domestic access point or a router. But generally speaking, yes, it is. If you've got anything to penetrate through, it will affect the throughput of wireless, especially on 5 gigahertz. Say 2.4 being a lower frequency, it can go through objects a bit better than 5 gigahertz frequency, but still, as it is physics, and the devices will lose wireless connectivity further they're away. Not only the distance, but actually what obstacles are on the way, it will affect greatly. Aaron, I know that you had plenty of places where you had to deploy wireless access points where the
I've seen environments you'd swear wireless would never ever work, but then you put it in, magically does. And like a simple example of that is those concrete Besser brick, those square Besser brick walls. There's basically two types. There's ones that are just the Besser bricks, and then there's the ones that have been backfilled with concrete and Rio for reinforcement. Very different in signal propagation through those two walls. But look, basically, I would always start with like a DAP series, because one, you're getting 100 milliwatt radio with a better antenna array, and work from there. And you use like the app on your Android phone, what Wi-Fi analyzer, and physically measure the signals. And you want to keep it negative 65 towards 0 is obviously the better signal strength to look for. When you see that type of thing, run another cable, put another access point in, because there are some environments you just can't get around.
So just a follow-up comment that's come in from David is a wireless mesh going to be a better solution? But that's kind of still sort of one and the same thing. You're still relying on a wireless link between those mesh base stations. So a DAP series of access points will support mesh. Of course, we do have our home range of wireless mesh networking products. The Cover 1100 series is something that's been released not too long ago. So that may be something worthwhile looking into. If the premises has got Ethernet cable running through it, of course you can connect an access point into that Ethernet cable, and we do also have Ethernet over power solutions as well. So
I was about to mention that. I had to do a survey in an old abattoir, which was all the walls were made out of bluestone. Now, bluestone, obviously like concrete, but this particular one, there was the power station down the road physically had an earth leak. So it was earthing back through the bluestones. It turned the whole joint into a Faraday cage. And literally, you put an AP on one side of the wall and you stand on the other side, you had zero signal. You know, the only choice for them was to use Ethernet over power. And it actually worked in that place. Don't know how, but it did, and that was the only choice we had. Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, David, comment from you.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that one. Sometimes having a look at the power line adapters might solve the problem. I know it's not business grade, but power line.
I'm using power line.
Might help as well.
Yeah, I'm using power line adapters at home as well. Some areas where just wireless doesn't get through. That's one of the good things. And yeah, throughput is great. So yeah, they provide a very good solution.
I personally did a little bit different. I made sure I had cabling.
Mm-hmm.
When I bought my house, I spent 2 weeks cabling it. I put 38 data points in my house before I moved in, so I can put my Wi-Fi anywhere I want.
Yeah, if you can run an Ethernet cable somewhere, that's certainly a great way to do it. So you go into some sort of heritage building that's got bluestone through it. They're not going to be very happy about seeing conduit running up walls and so on and so forth.
Wires.
Yeah. Now, another follow-up here from David. Does Ethernet over power rely on the same circuit? I think the answer to that is no. You do need to be on the same phase, but are not anymore on the same circuit. With the very first products that first came out 10, 15 years ago, that was definitely a limitation, but certainly not the case. Not the case anymore. They're pretty good products today, which are available. I'm not sure if you've got multiple phases or not. I guess get an electrician to come and talk to you, and they can have a look at your circuit board, etc., etc. But you'd have to have a pretty big house to have multiple phases for your wall power. Okay, we've got a question here from Jeff. This is another good question. Is the DSR router series likely to get Nucleus Connect functionality? Ilya, I think that's probably one for you.
Yeah, well, there is a plan to introduce Nucleus Connect or routers into the Nucleus Connect family. So we'll see next year. So cannot give you any promises, unfortunately, at this stage, but there is definitely a plan to do that.
Okay, question here for Aaron, I think from Glenn. While you mentioned some tools for Wi-Fi, what are the top 3 applications for network monitoring, some non-D-Link products, such as PingTile?
Oh, look, even Ping for Life, that's free. That's very easy to use. Can alert you on ping failures. IP scanning software, like Advanced IP Scanner, or what's the Angry IP Scanner? That's always very good as well. They're the main 2 I use, apart from the survey software, really. All the rest is pretty much command line based. Yeah, but they're the main thing. Look, Advanced IP Scanner you definitely need. And if you want to just monitor uptime of things, Ping for Life. That's a very simple, easy to use program.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Okay, question.
And Nmap for advanced, yes, definitely right. Aaron mentioned the Nmap for advanced IP scanning.
Yep. Okay. So it's great. Well, we may as well get to the question that Aaron has just asked here as well. Is there anything on the horizon for D-Link Nucleus Cloud for point-to-point Wi-Fi?
Yes, there is. So there will be support in the future updates for the Nucleus Cloud. There will be support, not for all access points, but for majority of them. They will support meshing or point-to-point connectivity as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ilya. Hopefully that's not too far away. Question in from Nathan that came in during earlier in the week. So I don't know, David or Aaron or Ilya, who's going to take this particular one. So Nathan asks, my question is around security. What's your recommended setup / best practice for implementing 802.1x NAC, network access control, in wired environments and also for Wi-Fi? Assume there's a full Windows Active Directory on-prem setup. I assume part of the solution will be CA and NPS up and running in the domain. But what products would be best for the switches / Wi-Fi, and any other recommendations?
Yeah. So basically, and thanks, Nathan, for the question. I'm going to go over the general idea. And of course, it would be better if you send us over more details. And if you're implemented it, we can go through the specifics. But basically, and for those that probably don't know much about it, 802.1x is basically the protocol for authentication, right? The idea is that I want to limit or basically deny or permit access to my network based on this protocol, right? It's a very standard protocol that all of the vendors will support. Not all of the products though, so we just need to make sure that our switch is supported. If you're using our controllers, wireless controllers, that they support it. Basically, they do, all of them, unless they're very, very old. But currently, all of them do. And the access points in this case, in this particular case, for your question. So basically, we enable the protocol. Since you already have a radio server inside the network, we just need to tell the switches or the routers or even the access points where that radio server is located. So we just need to add up the IP address, basically, and the port that you have set up for communication. After doing that, is just now up to the domain controller, based on the policies that you create, how the clients will authenticate. So if the clients are with the right username, password, they will go straight into the network. Otherwise, obviously, they will be denied. There are different ways to do this, especially if you have a big, dense environment. You would like to also create policies per VLANs, or basically the clients, when they authenticate, they want to go into a specific VLAN, not obviously to the entire network. It requires some work. It requires some specifics per the subnets, the VLANs, what exactly you're trying to achieve. I guess the typical example will be staff and guests, or students and staff and things like that. That's when I've seen them. I've seen the radio's environment working. It takes a little bit of work, but definitely you can use our switches. You can use our access controller, even if they are managed or not. You can definitely use them. So it's probably more about talking to us. Let us know what exactly you are trying to achieve. If you have an existing equipment, we can have a look on how to set it up and implement it. But that's definitely a yes. It is possible, no problem at all.
Aaron or Ilya, anything to add to that one? Okay, all right. Question here from Jacoby. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So is there a knowledge base or user guides for D-Link Nucleus Cloud?
There is some training materials in the Nucleus Cloud itself. There are some tutorials we have on our training portal, you can so it doesn't cost you anything. So you can register and watch that. There is a training on Nucleus Cloud, which covers just the basics. But since the work is still ongoing, so we're adding more and more features. Our developers are working on quite a lot of things to add into the Nucleus Cloud. So we will release a detailed guide, but at the moment it is so all online. So there is a video tutorial there, as far as I remember, under the support section on the Nucleus portal.
Okay.
Again, if you've got any problems, so we're happy to help you out. Just ask us questions.
So this is probably a more general question as well regarding do D-Link, do we run support ticketing system?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So within the Nucleus Cloud, there is a ticketing system there as well. You can open a ticket there and request remote access as well, or you can contact our support team or business support team, and so there's ticket generated, and we will be able to contact you and troubleshoot your account remotely as well.
Okay, thanks Ilya, and thanks for the question. Another one about a home style product for Robert. We might have covered this already, but we'll ask it anyway. Are we able to recommend any home or Soho mesh solution to improve Wi-Fi coverage? So I think we have our cover range of product, the Cover 1100, which are available as a single base station, or available in a 2 or a 3 pack, an 1102 and an 1103, which you're able to buy from any of our distributors. Of course, they're available through our retail partners as well. That's certainly a product that's compatible with, so it's a router only, it's not a modem router. We do have a product selection guide on the dlink.com.au website to help you choose the right, whether you need a modem router or a router for your home, depending on the type of internet connection that you have, and that then lists all of the different products there. Certainly, mesh networking is certainly a great way to go in terms of extending range. It does require a wireless link going between each of those base stations. So, of course, you can't be 400 or 500 meters apart to be able to and be able to still expect that mesh network to work. Those base stations do need to be able to communicate with one another wirelessly, but certainly for a lot of homes, the one that David spoke about sounded like a 1950s or 60s brutalist architecture home with all of the concrete and so on. In a situation like that, it might be a little bit more difficult than a home that's constructed out of plasterboard and timber framing and so on. Of course, the RF is going to transmit better through those walls and so on. Of course, we can't change the law of physics, can we, Ilya? That's they're pretty much set. Many people tried. Hasn't worked. Well, my time machine does work. If anybody would like to come on a journey with me, just feel free to drop me a line. Okay, I think that's all the questions that have come through. Ilya, David, or Aaron, I don't know if there's any other questions which you've seen through which we've missed.
No, pretty good.
Okay, terrific. Well, thanks so much everybody for sending those questions through. That's been great. And look, I think I'm really grateful to Aaron and to David and to Ilya, certainly the three really experienced field engineers and experienced at designing and building networks for people, and sharing your top 3 tips as well. There's 9 great tips that we've shared with everybody there. I'm sure if you took those into your everyday, I'm sure the experience that your customers are going to have in terms of their network experience, there's certainly going to be improved. And I guess some troubleshooting tips there as well. David, some great troubleshooting tips. So thanks so much for sharing those with us today. Of course, when normal service resumes with D-Link, which we expect to be at some stage during 2021, we do have a lot of training courses which are available as well. So we've got our D-Link certified network engineer courses, which are available to our partners in both Australia and also New Zealand as well. So we do run physical classes for our DCNP courses, but we've certainly seen a big uptake in our online classes, which don't require a physical session, our DNDA, DNCA, and DNCE courses. So for all of those, it's just a matter of setting up an account in our training portal at training.dlink.com.au or training.dlink.co.nz, applying the appropriate coupon. It's got a very difficult coupon code for that, D-Link Cert 2020. I'll leave it up to you to figure out as to what the code might be next year when we roll over into 2021. We'd certainly encourage you to go and get certified and to go and get some great practical experience from some of the best trainers that you'll find in our industry. Of course, so I alluded to earlier at the beginning, we do have a big range of webinars available on the D-Link Australia and on the D-Link New Zealand YouTube page. So please do go and check all of the webinars that we've run during 2020. Simply visit, search for D-Link Australia New Zealand in YouTube, click on channels. You'll then find underneath webinars, the full playlist and a playlist of all the webinars that we've run this year are available for you to go and consume at your leisure. So we'd certainly encourage you to go and take a look at those. There's been some sales and some product focused webinars, as well as being some technical webinars as well. So they've been really well attended. We've had great feedback from those, and certainly we really appreciate the feedback that we've had from our customers and partners during 2020 for the webinar program that we've run. So please do go and take a look at that. If you are an IT reseller and you are not yet a D-Link partner, I would certainly encourage you to go and sign up and join our partner rewards program. Visit one of those URLs that you see on your screen there and go and sign up. One of our channel managers will be in touch with you to learn a bit more about your business and to see if our partner rewards program is the right program for you. We do have a number of different programs available, some great benefits in working with us, some good upfront discounts on product. There's rewards, as the program suggests, that come through to you. There's targets that are set during the quarter as well, with some over and above prizes and rewards which are offered. Get access to our partner priority technical support team. There's demonstration or not for resale product. We've got a really comprehensive evaluation product program which is available as well. And of course, you get access to all of those great features of D-Link for Business networking products: limited lifetime warranty, lifetime support, and next business day advanced replacement. All of these are included at no additional charge. There's no ongoing service or maintenance with any of the D-Link for Business range of products. The only product that we do have some ongoing charges with is our Nucleus Cloud platform, which we have wireless access points and switches as part of that. We're really excited to be launching very early next year a SD-WAN router, which will be going into that product as well. There is a monthly subscription that is available, that is required to make those products work in the Nucleus Cloud management platform. That's proven to be, for lots of partners so far, a really great solution, a really great way of being able to manage and to monitor and to support their customers remotely. We do have a webinar on Nucleus Cloud, and we do have a course on Nucleus Cloud as well. So I would certainly recommend you to visit YouTube and to visit our training portal to go and learn more about that. Or of course, to one of our distributors in both Australia and New Zealand, we have Ingram Micro and Cinex, and in Australia only. We have Blue Chip Infotech, Dynamic Supplies, EdSys, Hills, Multimedia Technology, and Pacific Datacom. I'll leave this screen up just for a little bit before we conclude our webinar, which has the contact details of all of our team, not just a desk or landline number, but we're very happy to share mobile phone numbers as well as email addresses. You can see we've got channel managers, account managers across both Australia and New Zealand. Bernie Reisenberger, based in Brisbane, looking after Queensland and the Northern Territory. Michael Crocombe, based in Sydney, looking after New South Wales and the ACT. And Colin Chamberlain, based in Melbourne, looking after Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, and Western Australia. Ably supporting our channel managers in Australia, David Urbano, pre-sales engineer based in Sydney, and Aaron Bilton, pre-sales engineer based in Melbourne. Across in New Zealand, we have Paul Batchelor, our on-the-ground sales manager based in Wellington, but does make his way around the country when he is indeed able to get out and travel. Of course, where I'm sitting in Sydney, in Australia, it's where our support office is. Our partner priority support team are based in our office in Sydney. All of those numbers that you call, whether it's in Australia or in New Zealand, they do come into here. This is staffed and manned by a full-time team of D-Link staff. It's not something that's outsourced, and we're very proud of the high quality of service that we provide in our partner priority support team, as well as with my colleagues, David and Aaron as well. Thanks very much for your attention today. It's been great having your company. We appreciate the questions that have been coming through. It's been always great out there communicating and talking with our customers. We're pleased to share some of our experience and also to answer some of the questions that you've had as well. It's goodbye from me and wishing you a very good day from the rest of the D-Link team as well. Thanks so much. Goodbye.